A girl who had accumulated over 2 billion views across her YouTube channels. A girl who made strangers stop mid-stride on a California sidewalk and forget where they were going. Quietly stepped back from the platform that made her famous. Her name is Karolina Protsenko. And by the time you finish this video, you'll understand that what looked like a disappearance was actually something far more deliberate. A stranger filmed her first. That's how this whole story begins. Not with a record label, not with an agent, not with a carefully crafted launch strategy. In the summer of 2017, a man named Carlos Guti was walking through the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, California, when a 9-year-old girl playing violin stopped him cold. She was covering Luis Fonsi's Despacito, a song that was already everywhere that year, but the way she played it, moving and spinning as the bow crossed the strings, was something nobody around her had seen from a kid that age. Guti pulled out his phone and recorded it. Then he uploaded it to his own YouTube channel. Karolina Protsenko didn't even have a YouTube channel yet. That video racked up more than 100,000 views in 2 months. It was shared nearly 3 million times. Luis Fonsi himself saw it and shared it on his personal Instagram page. And Karolina, the 9-year-old who had simply shown up to play music on a public sidewalk, suddenly had an audience from around the world before she had ever tried to build one. That's the part worth sitting with for a second. Most creators spend years grinding for visibility. They post consistently, they study thumbnails, they optimize everything. Karolina Protsenko didn't do any of that. She went outside with a violin, played what she loved, and the internet came to her. Her mother, Ella, had been filming performances casually for family memories. Now those videos had a purpose. Karolina launched her main YouTube channel formally in 2018, and within weeks of uploading consistently, the subscriber count moved fast. She wasn't manufacturing content, she was capturing what had already been happening live, on concrete, in front of real people. But behind the effortless image of a girl playing violin on a sunny California street, there was a story that most of her viewers never knew. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around her saw coming. The Protsenko family didn't start in Santa Monica. They started in Kyiv, Ukraine. Karolina was born there on October 3, 2008, into a household where music was already the language everyone spoke. Her father, Nikolai, played guitar and sang. Her mother, Ella, played piano. And Ella's background extended further than music. She was a trained cinematographer, which is part of why the family's filming instinct was always sharp, and why their early YouTube footage looked more polished than most street performer videos from the same era. In 2015, when Karolina was 6 years old, the family left Ukraine and moved to California. The specific reasons behind that move have been a subject of curiosity among their audience for years, and the family eventually addressed it directly in a video titled, "The Truth, Why We Moved to USA." What's publicly known is that the decision was not tied to Karolina's music career. She hadn't started playing violin yet. The family came first, the music followed. Almost immediately after arriving in California, Karolina told her parents she wanted to learn an instrument. The choice came down to violin or flute. As she later said on the Ellen DeGeneres show, she picked violin without knowing what it was. She just picked it. Her first teacher was Armando Anto, who began building her technical foundation. By the time she was 10, she had completed Book 7 of the Suzuki Violin Method, a milestone that typically takes students many more years, and transitioned to studying under Sam Fisher at the Colburn School in Los Angeles. The Colburn School isn't a casual music academy. It sits alongside Juilliard and Curtis as one of the most prestigious conservatories in the United States. Sam Fisher himself holds a master's degree from Juilliard and is a concert violinist in addition to an educator. This is the layer of Karolina's story that most of her online audience never fully registered. Behind the girl dancing on a California sidewalk was a student receiving elite classical training at one of the country's top institutions. She was doing both at the same time, street and conservatory, YouTube and Mendelssohn. Most people who know this story stop here. But the real story starts right now. That second phase, the YouTube era that followed Carlos Guti's video, was more demanding than it looked. Karolina uploaded her cover of Post Malone's Sunflower when she was 10 years old. That video has now been viewed over 41 million times on YouTube alone. It reached Ellen DeGeneres, who invited Karolina to perform it live on her show in 2019. At 10 years old, Karolina walked onto one of the highest-profile talk show stages in America and played for a national audience. Ellen gifted her a custom violin and $1,000 in cash, money that Karolina said on camera she was saving. That performance introduced her to an entirely new demographic. Parents watching daytime television suddenly knew who she was. Grandparents shared the clip. The kinds of people who had never once opened a YouTube app were searching her name. What most people didn't see was the preparation behind any of it. Karolina had stated clearly that she practiced violin 2 to 3 hours every day. She learned an average of 2 new songs per week, almost entirely by ear. At the time she became nationally recognized, she had already memorized over 250 songs by ear, not by reading sheet music, but by listening. That number is not a small thing. 250 songs, learned by ear, by a 10-year-old. That's roughly 5 years of 2 per week learning, starting from nearly nothing. The effortlessness she projected in every video was built on a training routine that most adult musicians would find exhausting. The collaborations came quickly. Angelica Hale, Ali Sherlock, Daniele Vitali, the Italian saxophonist who became one of her most consistent creative partners, resulting in a full collaborative album in 2022 called Finally Together. The channel grew to 8 million subscribers. The total view count across all her channels climbed past 2 billion. Then, somewhere in the early 2020s, the rate of coverage started to slow. News outlets that had once written regularly about her began to move on. The viral peaks became less frequent. And by 2024, a portion of her audience began to notice that the uploads had thinned out. What they didn't know was what she had been building quietly in the background. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me because this next part is why the whole story matters. Between 2022 and 2024, Karolina Protsenko was doing something that most internet-famous musicians don't do. She was going backward, on purpose. While the YouTube channel continued uploading street performance covers, she enrolled seriously at the Colburn School and began preparing orchestral repertoire. In November 2023, she performed Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E minor as a soloist with Orchestra Nova LA. A critic reviewing that concert called her performance the showstopper of the evening, describing her maturity and phrasing as traits that usually take seasoned performers years to develop. She was 15. 2 months later, in January 2024, she performed the same Mendelssohn Concerto again, this time at Colburn itself, opening a masterclass led by Grammy-winning violinist Jennifer Coe. Coe worked with her on dynamic planning, structural interpretation, and musical decision-making at the phrase level. The session was reviewed by Violinist.com, a specialist publication for classical musicians, who noted her poise and accuracy. Here is the significance of those 2 performances that most of her YouTube audience entirely missed. She was crossing over from the internet world into the classical concert world. Not as a novelty act, not as a viral sensation doing something cute, as a serious orchestral soloist, being evaluated against conservatory-trained musicians. That takes on additional weight when you know that Karolina had actually tried to audition for America's Got Talent at some point in her earlier years, and did not make it through. A girl who couldn't qualify for a television talent show went on to perform Mendelssohn as a soloist with a professional orchestra at one of the most respected music schools on the West Coast. The same year as those orchestral performances, 2023, world-renowned violinist Ray Chen visited her during a live street performance in Santa Monica. The 2 of them played together on the promenade, classical and pop, in the open air. Chen is widely considered one of the finest violinists of his generation. Something had been shifting in her trajectory for a long time. And then in 2025, she made it official. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. On July 14, 2025, Karolina Protsenko posted an announcement across her social media channels. She was adopting a stage name for her original music, Karolina Rose. The name wasn't invented. Rose is her actual middle name. In the announcement, she said directly, "Rose is actually my middle name, and I'm so excited to step into this new chapter." She also explained the practical reasoning. Protsenko was hard for new listeners to search and engage with. Rose was simple, memorable, and still hers. But there was a deeper reason, and she was direct about it. She described this as entering her pop girl era. The move was a deliberate separation of 2 identities that had existed inside the same career. Karolina Protsenko, the street violinist and YouTube cover artist, and Karolina Rose, the original pop songwriter and vocalist. She didn't abandon the violin channels. The street performances continued uploading there. But the original music, the work she had been building toward artistically, would come out under the new name, on separate channels and streaming platforms. 6 weeks after the announcement, on August 15, 2025, advice dropped. Her debut single as Karolina Rose. She wrote and composed it herself, released through Protsenko Music Inc., her own label. The track explores themes of personal growth and what it costs to learn from the kind of loss that doesn't announce itself clearly. Her voice, separate from the violin for the first time, carried a fragility that her instrument had always hinted at but never quite exposed. Good Girl followed on September 19, 2025. A higher energy track, more confident in production, emphasizing her vocal range alongside classical violin elements, blended into modern pop. Then Shiny Webs arrived October 17, 2025, exploring themes of deception in relationships. 3 original singles, 3 months, a new name, a new identity. And while all of this was happening, the analytics on the original violin channel told a quiet story. From November 2025 to March 2026, the main channel gained only around 30,000 new subscribers. For a channel with 8.7 million followers, that is a near standstill. Estimated monthly earnings on the violin channel, according to analytics tracking sites, declined from a peak range of over $6,000 monthly in mid-2024 to under $4,000 by early 2026. The channel hadn't disappeared, but the energy had moved somewhere else. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. There's a detail about Karolina Protsenko's early years that almost never appears in the coverage of her career. Her mother, Ella, is a cinematographer. That's not a small footnote. Every single street performance video that launched Karolina's visibility, every clip that went on YouTube, every viral moment, every collaboration filmed on the 3rd Street Promenade was shot by a woman with professional cinematography training. The raw, unfiltered street performance aesthetic that made those videos feel authentic wasn't accidental. It was composed. Ella knew where to position, when to move, how to frame a performance so that it felt immediate without feeling chaotic. Most child musicians who get discovered on the street have one shot: someone else's phone. Karolina's family came to those early performances with a professional camera operator who understood visual storytelling. That is a significant competitive advantage that the audience perceived as natural talent and natural luck. It also explains why the Protsenko family's YouTube output, even in the earliest days, looked different from typical busking footage. The quality of the image matched the quality of the performance. And then there's the second thing that almost never gets discussed: the philanthropic work that Karolina has done quietly and consistently throughout her career. She has performed for patients at the Los Angeles Children's Hospital. She has donated to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, she addressed it publicly. She had cousins still living there, and raised funds through performances. She also gave an 8-year-old violinist named Emily Minko an unexpected moment in 2023, inviting her on stage mid-performance during a busking set to play the opening bars of My Heart Will Go On for the crowd. Minko played solo in front of a street audience, with Karolina watching and then joining in beside her. That decision, to stop her own performance, hand the spotlight to an 8-year-old stranger, and let the crowd witness something that would mean the world to that child, reveals something about who Karolina Protsenko is that no subscriber count can capture. One phone call, one conversation. That's all it took to change the direction of everything. March 2022, The Kelly Clarkson Show. Karolina was 13 years old and had been invited to perform a solo violin set on the show. She had been inspired by Lindsey Stirling since she was 6. It was a video of Stirling dancing and playing violin simultaneously that had first made Karolina want to take ballet classes, convinced that movement and violin belonged together. Stirling was the reason Karolina performed the way she did, with her whole body, not just her hands. What Karolina did not know, what nobody told her before she walked out, was that Lindsey Stirling was waiting in the wings. Kelly Clarkson had arranged a surprise. Stirling walked out mid-performance. The two of them played a duet of Stirling's composition, Guardian, in front of a live studio audience. Karolina, who had watched Stirling's videos as a 6-year-old in California and decided from those videos what kind of performer she wanted to be, was now standing beside her, playing together. The clip from that broadcast remains one of the most watched segments from Karolina's career. And what it captured was something that analytics don't measure: the look on her face when Stirling appeared. But the moment mattered for another reason that wasn't visible to the audience. Stirling's own career arc had followed a similar path. She had been rejected on America's Got Talent in 2010 before going on to build a massive independent YouTube following and a successful concert touring career. Karolina, who had also failed to qualify for America's Got Talent, was standing beside a musician whose story mirrored her own. The lesson in that pairing is not subtle. Rejection from a television talent competition is not the final word on anyone's career. Sometimes it's not even the first chapter. And here's what the comments kept asking. And here's the answer they never got, until now. As of 2026, Karolina Protsenko, or Karolina Rose depending on which part of her career you're following, is 17 years old and operating across two distinct artistic identities simultaneously. The Violin channel continues to upload. Street performances still happen at the 3rd Street Promenade. Her total subscriber count sits above 8.7 million, and the cumulative view count across her 3 YouTube channels exceeds 2.3 billion. The channel is not dead, but the upload pace on the Violin side has slowed considerably, and the analytics reflect it: declining estimated earnings, minimal subscriber growth in recent months. The momentum is clearly on the original music side. Under the Karolina Rose name, she has released multiple singles through her own label and is actively building what amounts to a second career running parallel to the first. She writes her own material. She controls the release schedule. She owns the label. For a 17-year-old, that level of operational independence is not standard in the music industry. She is still enrolled at the Colburn School, still studying classical violin under Sam Fisher, still preparing orchestral repertoire alongside whatever pop recording she's working on. The conservatory track and the pop artist track are not competing with each other in her life. They're running simultaneously, feeding different parts of the same musical identity. Her Instagram follower count has grown to over 2 million under the Karolina Rose handle. The audience she built on a California sidewalk in 2017, playing a song she'd learned by ear in roughly an hour, has followed her across every transition. What she did was not disappear. She stepped back from one version of herself to build another, quietly, deliberately, without announcement, and then walked back into public view with a new name, original songs, and ownership of the entire enterprise. The girl who once had no YouTube channel and no strategy built 2 billion views and an 8 million subscriber following from a single sidewalk, and then chose, at the height of that following, to start over with her own name and her own words. What comes next for Karolina Rose is an open question. The original music is still new. The audience she carries from the Violin era is substantial, but whether they follow her fully into pop remains to be seen. What she has going for her is something that most artists her age don't have at all. 8 years of consistent audience trust, complete ownership of her music through her own label, and a classical conservatory training that gives her a technical foundation well above what most pop vocalists ever develop. She is 17. She has over 2 billion views and 3 original singles, and a stage name derived from her own middle name, and she has not needed a single record label to get here. Do you think Karolina Protsenko made the right call stepping back from the Violin channel to build the Karolina Rose identity, or was walking away from that momentum a mistake she'll regret? Let me know below.